Your basketball team had a couple of nice games for a change.
Yeah, and then reality hit.
Oh, yeah, but still, I mean, they had that upset over Virginia and then the solid win over Louisville.
Yeah, I think given the personnel that he had to work with, I think this is a good coach. Once he gets,
It would seem that way. Yeah.
yeah, once he gets some players, he has a couple of good additions coming next season anyway. So we'll see. Yeah, I'm optimistic more so than for the football team. That's John Sasso. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we just did Michael and Mark. We'll give it another minute.
John must write a lot of reports for his work.
Why is that?
Or
Why is that?
thesis, a lot of thesis.
Why?
Well, they're just quite, they're great documents. I mean, they're quite,
I work in the medical industry. The FDA has a saying, if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen.
Oh, yes.
okay.
So yes, I do a lot of writing.
Sorry about that, folks, but we're all set now.
Okay.
Do you want me to record? Might as well.
Well, Ron's here to record, right?
No,
Ron's
they're
gonna take
recording
notes.
Zoom.
Okay, so
Yeah, Mark recording.
and we'll do the roll call. So Nora Bucko.
Present.
Okay, John
Recording
Passett.
in progress.
Yeah.
Oh, got it. Juan Assini,
Here.
Mark Doxer,
Here.
John Sasso,
Present.
Michael Colton. Not as yet. John O'Neill present. Okay. So first item, we got approval of 2 different sets of minutes. So I'll entertain a motion for us to accept the minutes of the February 22nd, 2023 meeting.
moved.
Recap. So moved and I see a
Second.
second. Yeah. There any additions, corrections, deletions? Seeing none, I'll take a roll call and vote on the acceptance of the minutes as presented. Nora Bucko,
Yes, accept.
John Parsons,
Yes.
Ron Assini,
Yes.
Mark Doxer,
Yes.
John Sasso,
Yes.
and John O'Neill, yes. And then we'll move to accept the minutes of the joint committee meeting with, and that was on 28th. All right, so moved by Mark. And we have a
Second.
second. Okay. Any additions, corrections, deletions to those minutes?
Just a question.
Yes.
Is the presentation that was provided at that meeting available? Is that something that will get added to the minutes? Or how could, where might we find that?
Was that not part of what Jenna sent us? There was 5 different attachments. I thought that was.
No, it was the 2 meeting minutes, the agenda, and then the summary report and the summary presentation. So
Okay, you're
So
correct.
you're looking for the architectural drawing presentation? Is that the one? John?
the one that the architect gave, yeah, it was a slide presentation that they gave that night.
That's a good point. I wonder if it's on the website.
I didn't see it, but then again, I didn't look too hard.
Good.
Why don't we just ask Jenna to add it to the minutes?
I would appreciate that.
Since I wasn't there, I would greatly appreciate that. Okay, so with,
Other than that, no questions.
okay. So now we'll take the vote. Nora Bucko,
Yes.
and John Parsons,
Yes,
Ron Assini,
Yes,
Mark Doxer,
Yes,
and John Sasso.
Yes,
Okay, so
and you,
I
did you?
I
vote,
was,
Ken?
yeah,
Oh, you
I
weren't there, but you need
wasn't.
to vote either yes, no, or abstain.
abstain. I'll abstain. Even though I've read the minutes. Okay, so discussion of the summary that we hopefully all, yes, Mark.
It's awesome. Nice job, folks. Tremendous job, in fact. I think it accurately describes what we talked about last time and all the work that we've done over the last several months. I think it's great. I think it's in, nicely done, it's in great shape, and it's ready, in my view.
Anybody else? Yeah, I was impressed with the first draft, and
Very
this is
well
even,
written.
better. It incorporated, I think, the different comments that we heard. And Nancy, Nancy? Well, I guess she's,
Nancy, are you there?
I see her on the screen. Okay, she must have,
Okay, she must have muted, she must have shut off her speakers.
yes. Okay.
Not to rain on my own parade.
Uh-oh.
No, I
Go
had
for it.
no, I had
stop, John, stop.
I had a question that I wanted to raise to the group, and I didn't have a chance to do anything about it. I've actually been fighting a terrible cold for a couple weeks, and it just keeps coming back. So I apologize if I cough through half of this. By the way, and I did desperately try to address the comments that you guys made, so hopefully that was a success. I was wondering whether we thought at the very beginning of this process, I had suggested that at some point we would need to put together like a little spreadsheet that told us, particular either area of the center or a particular type of program, and then some estimate of usage, and then translation to the need of space. And I was thinking about this, and I was going back through the data we pulled from our peer centers. I was looking at some resources that we had pulled from various communities that had made estimates about, well, you should have X square feet per person or something to that effect. And then I was actually, what prompted this was then the presentation that came out on the 28th from the architect, where he had a slide about the different rooms and how much space was being allocated. And I just want to throw this out for an idea. I'm not suggesting that we go destroy anything, but I was thinking we might want to consider, as part of our work at this point, that recommendation of, well, what does that really drill us down to? What does it actually say in terms of actual space needs that we think, a center would have to have in order to satisfy, all or part of the requirements that we've been talking about. And I have to be honest, I did not have a chance to even put this down on paper. It's really just been floating around in my mind about a couple of different sources to kind of pull together and really just provide kind of an outline of, okay, it's more than just these needs. It's more than just the decision about, X versus Y, but here's some actual concrete, tangible thing that we've pulled from our work. So I'm just curious what people think about that, whether that's of value to add at some point.
Hey, Mark?
So I think it's interesting. I don't remember us really having enough detailed data to do that. I think my thought it was more anecdotal kind of stuff in terms of, oh, you need, X square feet for a multi-purpose room or something like that. I thought it was more, these are the kinds of things, at least what I heard, these are the kinds of things you want to make sure you have. But no, in the two I spoke with, nobody said to me, make sure you allocate 672 square feet for this.
Yeah, I was thinking at the 30,000 foot level. So to your point, I think coming up with the exact numbers per a particular piece, we don't necessarily have a great way of doing that. like I said, what prompted this was, seeing what the architect actually had put together. But I was thinking, so I'll give you an example. So we went to 15 centers, 12 senior centers. We got listings of how much space each of them had. Take the outliers out for a minute, and you get an average of somewhere between, I think, 18 and 19,000 square feet for a comparable center in the local community. If you look at actual numbers, the other one was I think it was Nantucket, had a really nice summary of all the work that they have done, and they pointed to some national statistics about, well, if you have less than 1,000 seniors, you should do 4 square feet per senior. If you have more, or maybe it was less than 5,000. If you have more than 5,000, you should do like 3.5. And so there was some very general numbers there. And then there was the stuff again that came up the other night, where we've been looking at the different options we have in the type of space. Again, I'm not, like I said, I'm not suggesting we blow this report up. I just thought, as we were thinking about this, that it's a question that kind of came up, is like, okay, this is all well and good. What does this really translate into in terms of your physical space needs? So
My understanding, John, is that architects do have standards of square footage, depending on use and number of people. So I was thinking that rather than say, us coming up with a square footage, it's more like they said 80, room for 80. And to me, I actually thought 100 would have been better. And then them tell me how many square feet for that.
yeah,
And same thing for the different types of activities, an exercise room.
okay.
That
No,
is how they worked. That we gave them guidance on people, and they responded with other. They're the ones who kind of put together some of the square footage ideas.
I just wanted to sanity check it. I think, to your point, we don't have definitive data that we can point to. I was really thinking about it at a little bit higher level, but I'm certainly fine with what's been written up. We do actually have some of this information already documented in the reviews. So it's not that it doesn't exist. I was just wondering whether it's worth highlighting. So, okay.
Well, I think highlighting, John, is like one of the things you said. If you take the outliers out, here's the size for, comparable communities. I think that's that's good data. I think that would be helpful. I see
Yeah.
Marilyn has her hand up. Marilyn?
Oh, thanks. Thank you. I agree with what you're saying, John. And to the extent that we were looking at senior centers, which we were, I think those are probably helpful statistics. In terms of giving specs to the architect, if that's where this is headed, we need to make sure we're very clear that we're talking about a senior population in a multi-purpose room, not just a general population, because then you do need to add all the extra space for assistive devices and things like that.
And
But
mobility, yeah.
in the senior centers, it would have factored in because we were looking at senior centers, but in general, 2 different sets of specs potentially, but thank you.
Yes, okay. All right, other comments on the summary? I have a couple of comments on the slideshow, but let's.
Do you want to walk through that?
If,
Or you just want to, do you just want to deal with comments?
whatever people would prefer. I'm open. What would you, as you and Ron, since you presented it, would you rather just go through it, or?
I think it would be worth just going through it quickly.
Okay, and
I-
Ron's
Folks an
nodding his
opportunity
head
to
as well,
speak
so why
and-
don't you
and-
do that?
Okay, all right, hold on.
Nancy, I love the double vision here we're getting. That's not coming
Everybody
in
see,
too well.
can everybody
No,
see?
it's
the
not
screen?
coming in well,
No.
John.
No,
Yeah.
no,
No?
it's just like the top banner, nothing else.
Right,
Let's try this again. What the? All right, hold on a minute.
we'll mute you there.
Be a good idea.
The problem is I have like
Multiple screens.
multiple screens, so. let me just
John
try.
Sasso's not listed as a co-host. He might need to be co-host to share screen effectively.
No, it allowed me to share.
Okay,
How about
There we
now?
There we go.
yay.
Okay. All right, before we get into this, I do want to again thank Ron for helping make this look a hell of a lot better than I had originally. So thank you, Ron. So just a logistics check. So is the plan still the 21st of March, Mark? Are we on the calendar for that?
Confirmed, yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to go through this relatively quickly. So please stop and ask questions as we go through. Hold on a second. So this is just kind of a parrot. In some respects, this is a bit of a parrot of the report. So at a very high level, I wanted to just kind of keep us on track that we were charged with assessing needs and determining how we're going to plan for this. We actually, in my opinion, accomplished that charge and ended up with a recommendation to support this. This was the discussion we had at our last meeting to really focus on implementing a near-term solution focused on the senior population. So I think that's really the intent of the message here. Yeah. So I won't spend a whole lot of time. This is kind of the milestones.
And I like the 2 to 3 year time frame too, John, by the way, that,
Yeah, no, that was the results of the conversations we had at our last meeting. So I think we recognize that we want to do something, and we want to try to do it in a more expeditious manner. And given even the slightest bit of renovation work, you're still talking time. So everything takes longer in the government, right? So all right. So again, this is just a quick summary of milestones. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that. And this slide again is actually the same from the last time. I thought it was important to keep it in there. Why are we doing this? We're trying to put a plan together. We need to understand what our needs are, and we've had clear messaging that the current situation is not being addressed appropriately. We have a growing population, and we can't. We need to do something different. So. This is up to folks whether this needs to stay in here or not. This was not in the summary of the report, but this was the slide we had in here before about just to remind people that, again, there are a number of deficiencies with our current center. These are just a short list. It's not a complete list as far as I understand, but it's certainly a list of some of the more prominent ones. Basically, not really having a functioning kitchen.
On that one, John, hold just for a moment, because I know
Sure.
a finance committee member challenged me on that. And this is somebody who's very vocal also at town meetings. So I think we need to clarify that non-functioning, it's not that it's not capable. Because like that person said, does that mean it needs a new stove, a new refrigerator? No, that it's not capable of preparing meals on site. That's my understanding, right?
That is correct.
So how do we better express by saying non-functioning?
But
An adequate
insufficient.
kitchen, an inadequate.
Oh, it's definitely inadequate. So
I
what,
mean, non-functioning is correct. It's not functioning today. It's capable of being functioning, but it's not functioning
I
today.
actually, maybe I'm wrong. I thought, and maybe this is something someone on the call can tell me, that the stove actually isn't really working, and that the dishwasher's not working.
Right.
I thought those were two specific things that I recall.
Stove is
all I'm
definitely not
saying
working.
is, I'm trying to just put out
Sure.
what this person's
No, that's fine.
right, and I'm fine with the fact that it's non-functioning. I think there may need some clarification. In other words, I'm just trying to head off a question that it's gonna, it's already been out there and may come
Well,
up again.
I'm certainly happy to add a little note under kitchen, stove not working, dishwasher not working, whatever. Can we get clarification on that? Because I don't want to put it down until I know for sure. I just remember when I was on the tour, that's what I was told. So I just want to get clarification on exactly what is working and what isn't. Then I'm certainly happy at that point to say, well, do you think a kitchen is functioning without a stove and dishwasher? I suspect the answer is no.
No,
But
but
your-
what
your
they,
point,
what,
John.
no, John, what I'm saying is this person's response would be is, oh, can't we just get a stove and floor there? Do we need a whole new kitchen? See,
Yeah,
that's what I
that-
want to hit off.
Yeah, I thought there was some also discussion around that as well, that it wasn't as simple as being able to just replace this stuff.
Right. I agree. And I think the biggest thing about a kitchen is the exhaust. What there's an exact title for it, but it's the exhaust is, and that's the most expensive part of any kind of commercial kitchen. So I don't believe it's capable of producing that,
Well, let's come up with I'm happy to,
Right.
we can say inadequate kitchen, we could say,
It doesn't have enough storage space. It doesn't have enough refrigeration space.
it's certainly, it's certainly not big enough to really support,
Yeah.
delivery of
Right.
meals.
So how do is there another term that we can use that says that without saying non-functional? If not, if we can't come up with it, I'm okay with keeping non-functioning.
I think
but-
inadequate is okay. I'm not sure.
I don't know if that's strong enough.
Well, so
John
remember,
Parsons has his hand up. Can you help us out of this, John? John Parsons? You have your hand up, John? Oh,
You're
you're
muted.
muted.
You're muted,
Muted,
John.
Joe.
Yeah, okay, I've been trying to, I was clicking on the wrong place, the one mute. I wasn't, putting my hand up to comment on the kitchen situation.
Oh, okay.
But my thoughts in general are these pictures don't show how bad it is. The pool room, no, seriously, the pool room doesn't look that bad. The point is, when you make a pool shot, you have to be able to put your cue stick back without hitting the wall. The picture of the office in the hallway doesn't really show how bad that is. The pictures for the nurse and senior caseworker office almost looks like they've got two offices there. They don't. They have one tiny little office that the two of them have to share.
that's right.
The
Well,
computer.
I think the point there is that it's an open office for a casework and there's no privacy there, right?
It's interesting because Nora and I were talking just before other people got on. And Nora, I think it just would be of interest to people that your experience recently at the senior center.
Yeah, well, I went to take a class this week, and within 5 minutes of the class, I said, this place is really inadequate as a senior center because, for one thing, we were upstairs and it only held 9 people, but 12 showed up.
Right.
So they had to make like a makeshift room for like an extension. So you're like sort of looking for the teacher. And then there was a gas smell. And Rosemary, I know, has commented on this for years, but I never really experienced it. But there is a gas smell in there. And I put my mask on because I was uncomfortable in that class. And then in this extension room, they just made cubicles for someone's office in the middle of a class, and there was no confidentiality or privacy. So and I said, I wish everybody could see this or come to this class and see what's here,
So I guess I will say, I know Nancy and the COA is working on the video to hopefully, further demonstrate these sorts of deficiency and issues. I mean, the other option is to take this slide out entirely. My preference, however, is I do think it adds value to the presentation. So I like having it in here. And I think to your point, Nora, if somebody tries to challenge that, I would say, look, we're not going to sit here and try to say whether you know, you think one thing or us, go to the center, see it, you know, have the presentation, you know, we know for a fact to your point, these pictures actually do make it look better than it actually is in some respects.
Yeah.
So,
You're very glossy.
Probably
Yeah.
better off in black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so anyhow, a couple of comments, John, you were still.
Yeah. Well,
John,
but I see some hands up. I see
Yep,
Nancy has her hand up, and
Sure.
Maryland and John Parsons. So,
John, you're still muted. Go ahead and unmute.
Yeah, I still didn't get a chance to finish.
Okay,
You know,
I'm
Ron
sorry.
pointed out that the idea of some of the pictures is just to give them an idea of it, like on the Nurse and Senior Center, it points out no privacy, one-on-one space. But I think anybody's eye goes to the picture much quicker than it goes to the writing.
Yeah.
I don't disagree.
Okay. I guess that, you know, and again, I'll just say it looks a heck of a lot better here than it does in person. And I know I spend more time in that center than anybody on this screen.
Yeah, I'm.
Enough.
I guess I would ask the group. I will certainly let Marilyn and Nancy chime in, but my recommendation is keep the slide, and you know, if it generates more conversation, that's actually a good thing.
Absolutely.
But it was not intended to be the be all end all list of deficiencies, nor was it intended to show every little piece in the whichever way you wanted to see it. So, Marilyn, go ahead.
Just a quick point, and I don't know the facts, but I'll just raise the question. I suspect that the kitchen is not ADA compliant, and that might be one of its deficiencies as well. I see you, Ron, you shook your head and then you nodded, so maybe you're agreeing or disagreeing. I can't tell.
No, I agree. I
That's
agree, yeah.
all. I just wanted to throw it out there. It doesn't look like it's very maneuverable for someone with
Oh,
some
yeah,
sort of
not
assistive device.
at all. Nancy?
Can you hear me? I'm having
Yes.
problems with my,
Yes.
okay. I know that the kitchen had been repurposed so that when we were bringing in lunches from Merrimack Valley, it was set up as a warming kitchen. That's all. I am 99% certain that the gas is turned off on the stove. I'm not sure why. I don't know if the stove works or not. I believe the dishwasher does work, but the kitchen is very small. I would agree with those pictures. I mean, can we take some more realistic pictures and put them in? I volunteer to go take.
If you guys have other pictures that you want to fold in here, I'm certainly happy to add them. So by all means.
It's a timing thing though now, right?
Well, I think we have to put this presentation next Tuesday or
Tuesday.
Wednesday, Mark, to get in the packet.
Yeah, exactly. So it'll get published on Wednesday. So having it Tuesday night is the goal.
Okay. So if folks get me more pictures over the weekend, I can certainly add them in.
Okay, I will do my best.
Okay. Ron?
Yeah, so as you know, my wife works there. So I happened to go visit there, and Nora, I had the gas smell as well too.
And did you see your wife's office?
Yeah. So I mean, you may want to say that in this slide as well too. There is a gas smell when the furnace comes on. It's when the furnace first comes on, starts blowing the air, you start smelling I don't know if it's the exhaust or what it is, but it's pretty bad. She has to open up a window in the middle of the wintertime.
Is she at the hallway office, or is she on the first floor in the?
She has the second floor office that is kind of, it's not
one here?
listed here.
This
It's
one
it's
here?
kind of it's where Nora was having
The
the,
class.
Oh,
the class.
where the partition is up.
Correct.
Yes, that's her
That was,
office.
that was, I think that was Amy's old office.
Yeah, it
Yes,
is.
it is. Yes,
It's
it is.
Amy O'Brien's old office.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it was noticeable. I mean, I was like, whoa. And I'm very sensitive to gas smells. So I'm like, that's really bad.
Okay, I'll add a note about that.
You might want to check too. We've been repeatedly told by the town that there is no smell there.
Yeah.
And if there is a smell, it's not a dangerous smell. So apparently the fire department's been over there. Town building people have been over there, and
They need a
basically,
plumber. They need a plumber.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
just, it's not
They need
a
an
good
they need an
feeling.
HVAC person to go in there. That's what they really need.
basically the attitude has been just put up with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But it's awful. It's an
it
awful
is. It
smell.
really is. You have to wear a mask.
Yeah.
All right, I'll add a note about that on here. Nancy, if you can get me new pictures, I'll be happy to add in whatever you make sense. Again, I don't want this necessarily to be the total focus. I just think it was important to include it as a, hey, let's just remember why we're here.
Yeah, great.
All right, I'm going to move on. I tried to, so there's a lot more, so just to be aware, there's a lot more wording in the report for some of these things. I was trying to make it a little bit more readable. So I tried to talk about these strategies in a bit more high level so that, you know, what did we really do here? Well, we engaged the community through forums and surveys. We worked with COA and other places in the community to try to figure out what it is we needed to be doing here. We went out and we surveyed 15 senior/community centers. The Recalc group actually did those visits themselves. We created means for communication. We created some newsletters. We did some outreach with some postcards that were sponsored by COA. This really is intended to be kind of just a high level talking to the types of things that we've done over the last year or so. And then obviously looked at the option of an all ages community center, which is the terminology. I did actually change that terminology to be consistent with the survey and what we've been talking about. So again, if you go into the report, you're going to find each of these top 5 level strategies have quite a bit more wording, but I just wanted to keep it simple.
Great.
And so in addition to the primary recommendation that we laid out up front about, you know, basically trying to solve the senior needs within the next 2 to 3 years, these additional 5, what I call supporting recommendations, are things that we should also be doing in parallel to the extent possible. One is to actually so now that we've identified all these needs and we've really tried to assess what they mean, we really, I think, need to take a little bit more of a deeper dive into each of them and try to figure out priority wise what is the right approach for each of them, and what could we do both now and in the future to meet them. So I felt that's one of the more important recommendations. The other thing is we've already volunteered ourselves to provide support to some feasibility study options. Recalc created a is the right word subgroup? I just want to make sure I'm using the right word. Subgroup, a subgroup of folks that actually did some work on the Walgreens site, and we certainly are willing to continue to do that as you make more progress on different options. We've obviously advocated for continued investment into elder services. While we weren't responsible for it, I think we were pretty supportive of the ARPA funds that were added to the programming and some of the other activities that came out of that. We want to make sure we continue to develop communication strategies. One of the big pieces that we got back from the survey was we really need to up our game when it comes to communication. I think this is a joint activity of not just Recalc, but COA and all the other folks that are have impact to what we can do to let folks know why this is an important activity, what we need to spend on it, what the impacts will be. So that has to be done. And then the last recommendation, which is the one we formally voted on, which is we all agree that we'd like to, that the community seems to have expressed a strong desire for an all ages community center. But we just want to make sure that before we jump head over heels into that, that we meet the needs of our seniors first.
John, I think it was a working group is what we
Working
used.
group.
as.
Okay.
Exactly. That's the right terminology.
All right,
Working.
thank you, Ron. I couldn't remember. Let me just write that down so I don't forget. Okay. So overall, we our objective was to assess the needs and then figure out how those needs translated to senior / all ages community center. We, a couple just high level things. We certainly recognize that there are differences in needs based on age, and those differences may also have implications for the types of space and or accessibility features. But even so, they do appear to be somewhat consistent, at least in terms of what the community came back and said in terms of the rankings of those needs. The survey again does provide insight into the terminology I've used now is the top 5 selected indoor, outdoor, and accessibility needs across the age groups. And again, for the most
Thank you, John.
Yeah, and for the most parts, those results were well aligned. And the one point I want to make here is the reason why we changed that verbiage is it wasn't necessarily a prioritization. We actually had discussed this. I went back and looked. We had discussed with the UMass folks about adding prioritization to the way in which we would have people fill out that survey, and we decided based on their recommendation that that was not necessarily going to be the best approach. So in fact, all we did was really ask them, just pick the top 5 that you think are important. And so we can't really come up with a specific prioritization. We can only assess it based on that. And then the last item I wanted to mention is that there was a clear difference in the service needs. So we had a section on what sort of services do you think you need. Obviously, the example I'd like to use is that I don't think the elders need child daycare, so obviously the skew in some of those needs was age dependent. So, and that was, I don't think that was very surprising, but it was the one area where we did see some divergence in those particular approaches. So I then took the liberty of characterizing these needs into 8 different areas. I think they do represent a broad spectrum of things that we have been looking at overall. And so just quickly, I wanted to go through each one of these. Again, my intent is that the recommendation we put together was that we go into each one of these and try to maybe tease out a bit more details. But for the moment, I tried to at least give each one of these their due. So the first one is socialization. I think the point of socialization really is that, it's really a common theme across all of the pieces that we've looked at. You can actually consider any class, any activity that you do to be satisfying a socialization need. But I did want to at least with each of these highlight the facility implications and the implications for socialization are the types of spaces that one might have. And we did see in visiting many of the centers that they did have dedicated lounge and socialization space. Go ahead, Marilyn.
I agree with all the points. Nice job. The pictures, I don't know what life this PowerPoint will take on of its own, other than going to select board. We know those pictures weren't taken at the Pleasant Street Center. Well, maybe the bottom one was, but
The bottom
top,
one was, yep.
okay,
Yep.
but just,
Yep.
some comment should be made that some of these pictures are not from there, just so
Oh,
people
sure.
don't look at it and
Sure.
say, oh, wow, they've got a fireplace. I want one of those, So it's
No, good point. That's a
a
good point.
simple point. Thank you. But nice job.
I will say the pictures we've added in were kind of just for some distractions, I think, more than anything else, but to add a little bit of flavor to but yeah, that's a good point. That picture in the middle obviously is not Reading. I can't remember exactly where it is from, but the bottom.
But the one below is, so you can
The one
contrast the
below
two.
is Reading, and obviously the one above it is I think it's the Fall Street Fair picture.
The
or
one,
something.
the one in the middle is Andover.
Andover?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thanks, John.
And if you
Yeah.
wanted to comment on the Fall Street Fair, what they did to do that was to cover up block off the 2 only handicap parking places we have. That's the only way they could do that.
All right, again, interesting specialty program offerings. I mean, there is a desire to increase the reach of the community, of the center. And there are a whole bunch of ideas that people have talked about to do that, really to bring in other folks with different programs. One of the things that came out of the survey was, one of the reasons why people go to other centers is because the programming isn't offered in Reading. And I think it's not that we expect or want that every program has to be offered in Reading, but we certainly want to have, I think, a broader offering to drive more people in. So that the implications of that is some dedicated space. We don't really have that today, or what we do have is very limited. We want the flexible multi-purpose space, which I think is one of the most important things that the folks have identified as their, again, while we may not be able to say priority-wise, it certainly showed up in multiple places as an option. And then the other thing is just to remind ourselves that we do live in a virtual world some of these days, so we do have to make sure we incorporate technology, audio and visual, not just for remote, but also for the disability issues that we know exist in this senior population. Nancy.
So, John, when you wrote this, were these points specific to senior programming? Does the senior center has a desire for expanded program offerings? Those are some of the offerings that what you've listed are some of the things that have been talked about. And so I'm just wondering if the information on this slide is really talking about our senior center.
So I guess I would put this to the group, but my thoughts were as follows, that I am of the opinion, and we said it in our recommendation, that we have to solve the needs for the seniors first. And so everything that I've listed on here is, in my opinion, certainly applies to the seniors. It may also apply to the all ages center and those sorts of offerings. I think one of the things I mentioned in the prior slide about needs is that a lot of these were in fact consistent, that having varied programming was a desire regardless of age group in some respects. What specific things are decided for a particular group is a different question. So I really tried to make it more general. So to answer your question, I would say yes, this is targeted to address and provide recommendations for what the senior center should be, but also I think are relatively common for what we would want in an all ages center as well. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess kind of back to Marilyn's point, we don't know where this slideshow is going after it goes to the select board. It could be anywhere. I just want to make we want to make sure that what we're saying is accurate and true. And I understand how yes, there was an interest across all age groups and some similar things. Those were the only 15 things we offered. I'm just wondering if this can be taken in a way that's not going to work for us in the end. That's all.
So just two quick things, and then Mark has a comment. One is so again, I used to work also in the military world, and every time we presented a presentation, the first slide was, the slides in this presentation are not complete without the accompanying presentation verbiage. So I do certainly agree that people always take slides and can read into it what they want, but obviously it's important to have the right verbiage. So I would say if there's something that you think that can be adjusted on this slide or verbiage that should go along with it, I do have actual notes in the back of these slides. So by all means, feel free to share that, and we can try to tailor it a bit more. But yeah, we're never going to be able to control in the end where these presentations go and who reads them and what they pull out of it. So that's just the nature of the beast.
I was gonna say maybe a quick edit there would be where you said designed to draw more participants. Maybe you can add more senior participants or elder participants, and that could qualify for that a little bit. No.
Okay.
not-
So I think, folks, we need to be really careful here. Let me kind of sum up a few things. So the debate that I think we're going to have and the kind of way we need to take things forward, if it relies just on kind of the words and, you know, only this or only that, I think we're gonna run into a harder road, and I don't think that's really what we want to do. I'm striving to use the Recalc name, in fact, Recal, for the Reading Center for Active Living as a name to use, not a senior center, not a community center. Recal. That's kind of what we've coined as a phrase. I think it's a good phrase to use here. I think to your point, John, talking about dedicated space, flexible space, and the ability to have assistive technology, I think are fitting of whatever we're going to do. And I think it represents what we've talked about in terms of making sure that the 60+ community focus is there. I don't think it is something that even if it was just a purely senior center, I don't think any of those would be different. And that's kind of the gauge that I'm thinking about here, is that, you know, is there something that, you know, stands out as, well, it works in one, but not the other? I think they should work in both. I think they do. I think, again, dedicated space, flexible space, and then technology. It may be that the word is accessible. It should be added into that third point. That may, you know, kind of help some of the pieces of it also. But I want to make sure we're all going down the road quickly. The road may, you know, we may not agree on exactly its shape and the bends, but the road we need to be moving down the road. We need to be kind of together on getting down the road.
Mark, so what I'm hearing you say is that it's not necessarily in your mind, a senior center or a community center. It's this active living center. I think one of the things that the Recalc team found when they visited the sites, that most senior centers have about 15,000 square feet. So my question, and then I will shut up about this and I won't say it again. My question is, if the senior programming activities and services need 15,000 square feet, then that means we want a minimum of 15,000 square feet dedicated to the senior center. And my concern when we start mixing and matching and saying it's going to work for everybody, I guess I want to make sure that the taxpayers understand what they're voting for. That's all. And I won't mention it again. And I understand why you want to call it an active living center, because it's kind of more saleable, and you get other people, you know, the 60 and under group buying into it. But there's a dedicated group of people, you know, at least 5,000 to 7,000 people here in Reading that could use this center. And we need 15,000 square feet. And we know how big Walgreens is. So I would caution saying that this can be all things to all people. That would be, but say it anymore.
Yeah, no, I'm in complete agreement with that, Nancy. It can't be all things to all people. And I think to the extent that it's called a community center, it has, to me, that's the tone of that, is that it is all things to all people. And I don't think that we're talking about a facility that can accommodate that need. We're in agreement about that. I'm also leery of, if we just call it a senior center, I think that it carries different expectations. And I don't want us thinking too small, and I most certainly don't want us thinking too big. And so that's the notion of, all right, how do we describe it that it's clear that the needs of the senior community come first, period. And then there's some other things that can happen. So I think, I don't think this slide was designed to kind of be having this discussion, but I'm hearing you that it's coming up nonetheless. So maybe it does need a little bit of tuning so that it's clear, and we reiterate the issue of making sure that we take care of the senior needs first.
Okay.
Marilyn, did you want to add anything to that? You're muted, Marilyn.
Couple of quick points in terms of releasing the PowerPoint and how do you make the narrative go with it. Instead of doing the PowerPoint, you could release it as a video. It would be simple enough to record the narrative with this and release an MP4 file instead of a PowerPoint file, and people could watch. The narration would be embedded in it, so people couldn't not hear the narrative. Just a technical thing that not hard to do at all. Another reminder on the pictures, that's much nicer pool room. I know, point's already made. And you were rattling off words, Mark, that we might add, and I would add inclusive to the language as well. We need to get that in there as often. And just, I agree with everything both Nancy, you said, and Mark said about making sure the seniors are first and how we're going to also sell it and all those, and how much space is there. I just wanted to point out the Pulte houses that are condos that are all over the face of the earth. Many of them are age 55 or even age 60 and upward, and that they on their signs call it a center for active living. So it's a phrase that has sort of a connotation out there that is senior related that might help us, but I agree it also could backfire. But anyway, I've heard it in that context, so just wanted to throw out I could agree with either one of you.
If I could respond to that just for a sec. So I think that the reality is that the PowerPoint will be in the public domain. It is public information as soon as it's in the select board packet. So I think what you're talking about, Marilyn, is more of an is a way to enhance it and actually release it on YouTube, because there's not an ability to do what you're talking about by Tuesday.
It's not hard. If someone has Camtasia, it'd probably take an hour, but anyway, okay, I'm with you.
But the
It's gonna
select
be
board meeting will be
assuming-
recorded. when
Right,
you
the
deliver
select board
this,
meeting is
right?
going to be recorded.
Yeah,
so,
okay, just a thought.
I mean,
You could also publish the PowerPoint as a PDF with the notes. So there would be notes down below. So that's the other, but not just the PowerPoint.
yep, no, that's true.
Yeah.
I would suggest that we want this to live by itself. It may not be as good as having all the notes behind it, but people are gonna grab what they want to grab. So your point, Nancy, we want to make sure there's nothing in here that is a problem as we see it. But also we want to make sure that the more information that's getting out there that's in the right direction is a positive. And I think that's exactly what this does.
I do too. And if you add the notes in there, it would really seal the deal.
I think most people aren't, if they get to a PowerPoint, they're gonna be great just to see some slides. I don't think people watch notes.
Well, it depends on how you distribute it, Mark. So anyways, that's.
And the notes that are in there, by the way, are very like bullet points for like me to remember what I'm supposed to be saying on a particular slide or something. So they're not that helpful, I think, in some respects, but
You can also record into PowerPoint.
that is true. There's ways to make some of this interactive.
It wouldn't even be interactive. It's just when you clicked on it, the narrative we'd hear it. You can attach audio.
All right.
Anyway.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna keep going here.
Yep.
The good discussion. I think it's worth just remembering that we in this particular section of the presentation, as and again, we already talked about priority up front. This really was just intended to kind of tease out needs and try to reflect those in terms of what we've identified and how we think those would be important for any approach that we're trying to take. Let me keep going. So this physical activity, again, not only did we determine that one of the top attended programs for the current Pleasant Street Center are those associated with physical activity, the community in general was consistent in their feedback about having access to programs for this in this regard. So there are definite implications for space. I think the fitness equipment in particular requires dedicated space, and certainly any rooms that could be used for a physical activity. We talked about special flooring or other things like that. So this is certainly an area where there are some specific implications based on the program that you want to run and the space that you have. Meals, I think this, I actually heard some feedback more on this, and so folks have that, they can let me know. But clearly, the option for a daily meal, I kind of parroted the wording here, was not only deemed a priority from the community survey in terms of one of the top ranked items, but it was also appeared as something that's commonly done by our community, our peer community centers. I think there's really a difference. This goes actually back to the kitchen. There's clearly a differentiating factor to the amenities required to support provision of meals. As Ron had said earlier, I guess our community center, our Pleasant Street Center is really a rewarming station. It's not really a kitchen from that standpoint, and maybe that's an interesting way to present it. So it does actually limit what we can provide. And then obviously there's this expressed desire to have access to other services that support that.
John, under the, functional kitchen, maybe if you said commercial kitchen.
Well, I have it. So I'm gonna. I will change that wording. I did consider commercial kitchen underneath it. So let me think about the word to put there.
Okay.
Just give me a note. I'm just making a note. Okay. Outdoor activity, and didn't spend a lot of time on this. These were the top 5 ranked items from the survey. Pretty consistent across the ages, and basically there is an expression that there is a need for some outdoor activities that should be supported in whatever we end up with. And these are some of the things that have been identified, and we certainly saw this in reviews of our community, our peer communities. Many of them have outdoor areas that support additional activities beyond just the indoor programming. So I put administrative services. Obviously, I have continued to beat the drum that it's not just about the building. It's also about the staffing and the programs and services that are necessary to support the community. And so these are just obviously the biggest issue that continues to be heard is this lack of private space for meetings and residents with appointments. And then just the adequate staffing. I know someone said that we're getting close to quote unquote full staffing, at least based on what we have budgeted at this point, which is great. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's everything we need, because we know that when we compare us against others, we're kind of on the low end, and we know that the staff that's there today, and this was just the comment that came out of one of the things, is that the Pleasant Street Center staff are maxed out in their ability to meet the demands of the community. So we know that is an issue. Obviously, there's some facility implication about office spaces and conference rooms and things of that nature, but this kind of goes to support the the overall programming and services that have to be delivered through the center.
See, I'm not sure where it should go or if it can go, but the issue that the rec people came up with, that they would like to be providing services during the daytime for seniors
Yeah,
as well as others.
yeah,
I
that's
think that's an important component moving forward, you know, but I don't know where it fits.
I
Or if
have
it
to
just goes in the summary somewhere.
I have to say, and I said this at the last meeting, I said the memo that was provided some really interesting points to consider.
Yeah.
I don't think we've really had an opportunity to really vet it well enough. I do think that the points they raise make sense in some ways in terms of, are there some things that can be leveraged to support what rec may have needs for as well, but we just really haven't spent enough time to think that through, and I would just be hesitant to want to say very much until we really sat down. The other thing is, I kind of view it as a bit of a distraction, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is where we should be pushing. I guess I leave it to the committee for feedback on that.
I raised it just and I think I said it at the last meeting, that it did come up in the public hearings, the issue of us working with the other departments, of the town and resources. And so I think we're, at the very least, we need to be prepared to, if that comes up, it's more likely to come up at town meeting, I think.
The interesting thing, John, let me just add a point, maybe people have a different view. I actually took the point that you made about, why can't we look at other resources and other things to be as a means to help satisfy the existing senior needs versus as a way for, us to then also offer support to the other things that are going on in town. Do you follow me?
Yeah, but see, that's not where I'm coming from at all. In other words, I'm trying to respond to that, the fact that there are existing resources and if we just use them. And I'm saying that we have to at least be prepared to say that the recreation is saying they don't have enough places where they can have activities. And that's one of the reasons why they can't provide services for older people during the daytime anyway, in which, it's not that, certainly that's not the only time that older people, want to have programs and services, but a significant number of the older people, yes, it's going to be daytime. And that's a real problem, that there aren't any alternatives right now. No matter what people may say about, the Y, the library, recreation, there's no alternative. So I think that's something that at least I know that we have to be prepared to say.
I just struggle a little bit on exactly how to incorporate that into.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how to do it either, John. I'm just throwing it out there.
I do think so. I absolutely agree. It is a fair question that people might ask, given that we are, steering this in that direction in some respects. That, hey, you're going to end up building this center or whatever it is you're going to build or create or renovate or whatever the solution is going to be. People are going to ask the same question that we asked. Well, you're building it. Why can't we use it for other things as well? I think we need to be clear that while we're not, this is my opinion now. While I don't think we're adverse to that, I think we have to stay true to our original goal, which is we have to meet our senior needs first, and we're not doing that. And then, unless and until we do that, I think it's tough to understand what else we can do. Not to say we shouldn't at least be open to that idea, because I think that would be we don't want to be in that position either. But I have a hard time trying to figure out exactly how beyond that to really present that. Mark, you have some thoughts?
Not exactly on how to present it, but I think it's a good discussion that both Johns that you're talking about. the other or another element of this is what will happen to the Pleasant Street Center, assuming that we're going to build a new facility. And, is it the campus concept that's come up? Is it a separate municipal facility? Do we look to do something completely different, a non-town activity, selling it or leasing it or whatever? And the reality, I think, for town meeting is that we'll have to have answers to those questions. And John Sasso, I think that we need to be careful not to get sidetracked right now, while also appreciating that we're going to need to deal with these questions and to
No,
think about what it means.
I agree. No, I absolutely agree.
And I think that's kind of where we are, is that we have a mission. I think we stay true to it. I think we drive ahead, and we've got to think about these other pieces also.
They're definitely going to come up as questions. I agree. And we've already opened that can of worms to some extent. So, okay. All right. I want to keep going. So accessibility, again, I view this as a bit broader. There's the physical accessibility pieces that we want to make sure allow folks to use the center. And to Marilyn's point, the inclusivity. We also have the issues of things like limited hours of operation and those that don't drive, how they're going to get there and where they're going to park. There are those aspects. And then there's the actual, the program and service accessibility itself. And I was thinking a little bit more about the way the systems and the processes people have to register for programs, or the needs to be able to have a one-on-one office program to allow that to be accessed. So there's a whole bunch of things that are tied up in this. And I think it's the reason why I felt it was important to separate it out as its own kind of need. And obviously the implications for the facility, there's a lot. The 4 bullets don't do it justice, but that's kind of the point. Mark, go ahead.
I think you're spot on, John. I would just suggest under the implications, instead of it just being parking, I think it should be parking and transportation.
And transportation. Nope, thank you. Good catch.
In fact, I might suggest you wouldn't say parking, you'd say transportation, but fine, keep it with the parking, but because sometimes people are just going to focus then on parking. And it's not just the parking, it's a transportation.
I think it's both. No, I think putting both in there is reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah. Affordability. So I tried to address the comments and discussion we had the last time here. There was, again, the most selected accessibility feature was really little to no cost to participate. And the second piece here was related to the financial discussion we had in the survey about what people would be willing to pay, added to their annual property taxes. So I tried to balance this a little bit, in the sense that there's those that have said, yep, we're willing to pay up to $200 versus those that said, hey, we don't want to pay anything. So I think it just shows a little bit of dichotomy, and I think that's fair to show. But I think the last bullet is the piece that I think is, kind of the elephant in the room, is that there is this concern about affordability in general, and that people feel like they're going to get priced out of the community. I listened, I think the last time we did the presentation, the presentation before us was on the assessment and how much it costs to have a 2-bedroom rental apartment in Reading at like $2,633 or something like that. So I do think there's this other piece about affordability in general that we just need to be aware and therefore be judicious in how we plan to meet these needs. Okay. So the last, maybe Mark, this is an area where we might want to recast this based on what you just shared. So we did in our charter, we had the question of, should we do a senior center or should we do a community center? And so our questions in that survey were really tied to this, and this is really the chart that came out of the report. And really the conclusion of this in my mind was that there is a desire for a community center. And maybe we again, we can think about, Marco, interested in your thoughts now that you've recast it a little bit. But we definitely don't want it to take precedence over first meeting our needs of the seniors, and that we should understand that there are other facilities and services and support throughout the community, and we need to make sure we understand how those can be taken advantage of, without just necessarily, creating a center that's supposed to do everything for everybody. And then obviously the last comment, which was, we did say that even if we go forward with an all ages community center, there does need to be dedicated / separate space and programs for services for elder residents. So I think we all agree on the last bullet. I'm going to stop there for a minute and see if folks have other comments on that. Nancy?
I know that this 49% has been used quite a bit, but I have to say, I have a bit of an issue with that 49%. It's less than half, and more than half of the people that filled out the survey were 60 and over. I just think it's misleading to say 49%. You could say 51%, or you could say 83% believe that there should be a senior center. Not to belabor that point, but I think that 49% is a bit misleading in terms of what we learned from the survey. That's my 2 cents.
Mark?
So I think we got to be careful, because Nancy, the flip of that would be, well, 33% are the ones that said senior center. So
the 49% said senior center too. So
all ages community center, including designated space and programming for residents age 60 plus. That's the 49%.
right.
I have to step away from the call for 1 minute, so keep going. Sorry.
Yeah.
But
So-
it
Go ahead,
excludes,
Nancy.
in fact, more people, whether you put the community center in there or not, wanted a senior center than a community center. Now, whether you want to pair the senior center with a community center, okay, but more people that returned that survey wanted a senior center in total, if you look at all the respondents. I just find that 49%, which isn't even 50%, I find
But
Leading.
Nancy, 10% had no preference, and 3% was other. So there isn't any majority on any of it.
Yeah, so I think you want to take kind of where's the biggest chunk in terms of what's going on, but I'm not reading, Nancy, as you are. I'm not seeing where it says that senior center is a bigger number.
well, no,
Can I try?
but if you take, you figure when people are filling that out, I'm a very nice senior. Sure, I would like a community center. That would be great, but I want a dedicated senior center.
Yeah.
So I say, I'm going to pick dedicated senior center and with the community center. The people that picked that option because there was a senior center component in there.
Yes, and also the other. I think the danger here is trying to read into this more than is here, and I fear that's what's going on. What we have here really clearly is that there's a group of folks who said all ages community center, a substantial group, in fact, the biggest single group said that if and only if there's a dedicated, designated space and programming for residents age 60 plus. To me, that's the takeaway, right? There has to be this dedicated space.
Okay, Nancy, for a second, we let Marilyn speak.
I don't agree. 49%. That's all, and I'll shut up.
Okay, Marilyn.
I agree with what Nancy is pointing out, that all the people that pick community, and I think it's really important on here to, I know it's wordy, but I think we should never say community center without saying with designated senior center in it. because it's not a community center all by itself that anybody even had the option to give an opinion on. And I agree with Nancy, someone who saw that as an option understood that they would be getting a senior center and it would also be in a community center. So whether they picked that or whether they picked the senior center only, they want a senior center for all we know. It's another case where we're trying to read into it what we didn't really ask, unfortunately.
But careful with your words. You stated it perfectly a moment ago, which is that it shouldn't be a preference for an all ages community center. It should be preference for an all ages community center, including designated space, you know, for programming for ages 60 plus. That's
Well,
what it should say. And I think that would resolve our problem here.
Well, I don't think it gets to the bigger picture problem. It solves that sentence. But the bigger issue, I
but
think, is
folks-
just as Nancy's saying, we've got 83% in total who picked an option that they believed would lead them to have a senior center. Would you disagree with that?
Yes. The
Yes, I
question
do
is
too.
asked, what's the most preferred scenario?
No, I'm talking about what they think they're getting. If you chose community center with designated senior center space, are you not thinking you're going to have full senior center capacity in there?
I'm thinking of exactly what it says.
Well, it's as likely that it means that as just community center with it. And we're assuming it means the opposite and that only 49% is that only the 33% only wanted the senior center as opposed to, we're reading into it either way is all I'm saying. And I agree with Nancy. So for what it's worth, we stand together on this one. And I think if you did a deeper dive, you'd find that the majority of those people understood that in picking that, they were going to get a senior center.
I think you're answering a different question, and maybe we should answer that elsewhere, which is how many of the people are supporting a senior center in whatever form? And I think you can
Exactly.
come back and say, oh, okay, yeah, that's this big number, 80, whatever it is.
That's 83%. And I think that's a very important thing to know.
Then maybe that's maybe a separate point that we should make, and maybe it's the first point that we should make. But then
That
I
would be
think in
good.
addition, you've got a substantial group of folks who said, hey, when I was asked what my preferred scenario was, this is the one I picked. And
That's
49%
fine.
said
That's
one.
fine. But I think it needs to be in the context of the 83%. And I think that feeds right into the thing we keep coming back to is it's meet the senior needs first. And
So I guess I would just be careful because you know, taking your point, Marilyn, we didn't actually ask that question. So, but what we did get were answers that now, to your point, we're trying to read a little bit into this. We're trying to say, well, everybody that answered either senior center or all ages community center with programming for dedicated space and program really all wanted a senior center first. We don't know. We really don't know the answer to that question. Well, I'd like to believe
it's true.
I mean, it's just what we don't know. So, I mean, that's why I tried to caveat this a little bit. I didn't want it to come across as, you know, we absolutely, you know, all agree that overwhelmingly we only need an all ages community center. That's not what this says. What it says is that there is a preference that was stated, and I agree. I will add to the end of that sentence just to make it crystal clear what the stated preference was. I put pros and cons because there were, the reason I put pros and cons is there were a significant number of people that commented physically in the report, both positively and negative about this approach. So I think there's some pretty strong opinions on both sides of the coin here. So we just have to
I have a real problem with the pros and cons. First of all, it's unusual for me anyway to see one pro and one con. And the con is 21%. And even that within the, I'd like to know, you know, I'd like to break down 21%. And then
I did, to your point, John, I did dig into this into what was provided by UMass, but I think what I included in the report around this that came out of the UMass report is really the only inferences we get about this. There's no more detailed data beyond the actual comments themselves.
right, but then I'm saying, like, this, you're starting off this, the heading of this one, basically, because these are the pro and con are underneath the statement 49% of.
Yep.
And then pro and con, well, it's not pro and con based on the 49%.
No, you're right. It's with regards to the idea of an all ages community center, not necessarily regarding the preference of one of them.
Right.
I mean, to your point, I was trying to, maybe I need to go back and look at this some more. But the way the UMass report presented this, they did spend some time talking about the however many people that actually took the time to write comments out within the, beyond the tell me more about your desires. And I think that's where we got, where we got these sorts of things. And they actually did try to characterize those comments to an extent. I mean, I certainly could add another little chart here around those guys, but I'm not necessarily sure that's really necessary. I mean, I think let me put this aside for a minute. I still believe the message on this slide is the community has said, we really do believe there's a need for there's a desire for an all ages community center if and only if we address our senior needs first. And I still believe that's what this.
Agreed, totally, yes.
Yeah.
So we can figure out how to slice and dice this, but I think that's really what I want to make sure we convey here.
John, what if, I think we're circling into the right piece. What if, I think it's the heading perhaps that could be adjusted. So instead of saying senior versus community, it's really senior versus community with dedicated space for seniors. That's really, I mean, in fact, those are the two choices that garnered all of the numbers. And maybe that's how we fix it, is by making it clear that it's not saying they just want a community center. It's that if it's a community center, it includes dedicated space for seniors.
You can add like a subtitle underneath that, John, perhaps.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
You
Okay.
know, looking for a 30,000 square foot building, but I said I wouldn't say anymore. So.
You know of any, Nancy? All right, no, forget I asked that question. All right, I'll make some adjustments to this slide. I'll certainly add the comments you just mentioned as well. But I do think the takeaway is, we have to address senior needs, and even if we do an all ages community center, it has to have dedicated space. So, okay. So next steps. I didn't necessarily want to go back through all of the recommendation stuff, but I thought I would actually take that first priority recommendation and maybe break it down just one little piece further. And so this is something that I'm not sure you guys maybe had a chance to look at in detail, but so the first thing is the next step really should be focusing on the primary recommendation, which was to implement a solution to address the facility needs for the seniors in the immediate time frame. And so I really broke this into three different pieces. The first being is obviously the facility solution itself. The second being the investment into programming and services and offerings and accessibility, the things that have to go with it, if you will. And then the third thing is the communication, which I think we've heard enough times now that we just need to do a better job with communication. So I tried to, this is a bit more of kind of real focused next steps on this particular recommendation. So anybody have any thoughts about that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I like it.
Okay. Then I think, so Mark, just for your FYI, I think these really are actionable items from a next step from a select board activity perspective too. So, and we've already started on some of these as well, obviously, but I do think it's important to lay it out like this. I put this as a last slide, the future of recalc. So we are supposed to sunset June 30th. So we extended the work to allow us to finish this phase of the project until we've kind of sent our final report. I still, I did include the little blurb that, we've definitely developed a fair amount of understanding. And whether we continue to exist or not, we certainly recommend that, you move forward with these recommendations. And if there are members from Recalc that can be supported in that, or if Recalc as a whole continues, that's entirely up to the select board to decide.
Bravo. I teed it up at the last board meeting that kind of coming in with a what's deemed a final deliverable by the group, and looking either for new tasks if it's going to continue, or other best ways to utilize this resource.
Okay, and then I still have this. This is just all the pictures we took, or a lot of them, from the other centers. That's all I got. Other comments, questions, ideas? Is this what we were expecting? Did I miss something?
It's really good, John, and Ron.
Very
I think you guys did a
thorough.
great job on it.
Okay. John, turn it back to you. You're muted, John.
Okay, sorry, I had to step aside. Back now, and did we conclude the
Yeah, I
presentation?
think I've got a few minor edits that I'm gonna work on, and I'll send an update to Jenna. But really just to try to address some of the items that we talked about today. Otherwise, I think the rest of it is in good shape.
Okay.
Quick
Mark?
question, or comment.
Yeah.
So what's the plan in terms of presentation? Will it be John Sasso who's going to present? And I'm assuming that we should ask Jenna to post Recalc for that meeting.
Yes. And yes and yes. At least for
Okay.
John Sasso, is that all right with you?
I have it in my calendar, so
Okay,
barring
great.
any other issues, I should. Do you know what time, Mark, we might be on for that, or is?
Give me 1 sec. I'm going to check right now. There's not a final agenda, but early is going to be the answer. Let me just give me 1 second to see if I can find the real answer. You guys keep going. It's going to take me a sec to find it.
This is the 21st, right?
Yes, it's the 21st. Do we
So-
need to schedule another meeting?
So sorry, 8 o'clock is where it's currently slotted
Okay.
on the 21st.
John, my thoughts, and it's certainly up to you guys. I think the reason we scheduled tonight was we knew that we needed to review this prior to the select board meeting.
Right.
So I'm not, I mean, there's other stuff that we've kind of put on the plate to kind of burn through, like taking this and making it a newsletter and doing some other stuff, but I don't see any other critical need at the moment anyhow for another follow-up, unless other folks disagree.
I'm not seeing any. Okay, Mark?
Maybe just a thought that, following what you're saying, John Sasso, maybe what we do is wait for the select board meeting, see what kind of the outcome is from that meeting. If there are specific suggestions that come
absolutely.
forward or requests.
Yep.
And then that helps figure out what the next steps might be beyond, as you said, more of the communication, continued communication.
No, absolutely. Yeah, that's, I just meant, I was responding to John's question about a meeting between now and then, and I don't I
Okay.
don't see the need to meet before the board meeting. I think after, yeah, we should probably.
No,
plan.
actually, I was actually suggesting, or saying, might we want to schedule something for after the meeting,
Oh,
but
yeah.
you're saying that it might not necessarily have any more meeting. I'm not clear.
No. I think we should, well, my recommendation, the board can take it for what it's worth, regardless of what comes out. I think we should plan on a follow-up meeting after the select board, just to, even if it's just to digest what they told us. If they told us what we've done is terrible and we should go away, then okay, we should talk about that. I
Yeah,
hope
John,
that's the case.
John O'Neill, I was confused as well too when you first asked the question. It was like, should we have another meeting? And it sounded like you wanted it before the select board
Yeah,
meeting.
Yeah, no.
So
I
that's what
wasn't
threw us
thinking
off.
about-
Yeah.
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 How about the week of the 27th?
March.
Maybe that Wednesday, the 29th?
Let me
We've been
just
doing We've been
check.
doing Wednesday meetings, I thought, for the most part.
That would work for me.
I think we lost John again.
I know I can't do the 29th. I could do the 28th. And not the 30th.
I cannot do the 28th. I can do the 29th. I can't do the 30th either.
Okay. Any other suggestions?
How about
For
the
me,
following
29th.
week?
Following
that
week,
week's tough.
April 5th.
April 5th is the first Passover Seder, April 5th and 6th. So I'm going to be out for those.
April 4th.
How about Tuesday the 4th?
I can't
That
do.
election day,
That
It
is election day.
is election day.
Very good, John.
and if you get later into that week in April, I'll be at the Frozen Four, so I wouldn't be around.
Good. Way to go.
What if we go a little bit later into April, 11th or 13th?
Okay, what day of the week is?
11 is a Tuesday, 13 is a Thursday.
So it would be Thursday would be better for me.
How does the 13th look for folks?
I'm seeing thumbs. Okay. So 13th. Okay, I'm back singing, so Tuesdays are. Is your wife doing it this season?
Yeah, she's there. She's there.
Okay.
I can do the 13th.
Tell her I'm one of the 5 tenors or 6 tenors up front.
I keep telling her, have you met John? No, I've met John.
Okay, so we're set. That's for April 13th, and we're all good to go to have the materials in time to be able to go into the select board packet. John Sasso is going to present.
I will get the edits, and if Nancy has any more pictures she wants to send me, I'll try to incorporate those as well.
Great. Okay.
You just ask Jenna to post for us. Post
Yes.
all of recalc for the select board meeting on the 21st of March.
Okay, now do we have any other further business that we hadn't had on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain motion to adjourn.
Motion to
So
adjourn.
moved. So move, second,
Okay, so we'll vote since it's, so Mark Doxer,
Yes.
Nora Bucko,
Yes.
Ron Assini,
Yes.
Michael Coltman, John Sasso,
Yes. John
Parsons,
yes.
and John O'Neill. Yes, thank you all very much. And you too, Nancy, and if Marilyn's still on.
Thanks, folks.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening,
Nice
everyone.
job. Nice job, John.
Yeah,
Thanks, Ron.
great job, great job.
Was
Appreciate
and
that.
Ron.
It made it so much easier. I really appreciate it. All right. Have a good
Recording
evening.
stopped.